I think one of the first things, and you kind of touched on this, is dinner. We need to in our house be connected and not disconnected and have everybody off in their bedrooms on their devices. So family dinner is so important. And if it's not dinner, family breakfast, but at some moment, the family coming around and sitting down and saying, what was the best part of your day today? What was a part that you didn't like? Going around and having those conversations is so crucial. Your children should not be taking a plate of food and going to eat in their bedroom. You need to connect. And you're right, social media has made us so connected, yet so disconnected. So encouraging your kids to get outside is so important, which means you have to probably get outside with family hikes, go for a walk with your kid. Anything you could do to increase that quality time is so important and so good for them. I always say you need to set up some type of rules around your child's devices. They should probably never be in the bedroom, especially overnight. They should all be in one collective place charging. Try to hold off on social media as long as humanly possible. There does come a time when you just can't, because it will impact them, unfortunately, socially. But don't be the first one to jump on it. Please be the last.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have another awesome author on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about your mental health, which I'm excited to talk about because I think we need more of this, and we need more people like my guest to come out and encourage us and give us the tools we need to live a great life. Keri's here with us on the podcast. Keri Cooper's on, and we're talking all things authorship. Keri, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's exciting to have you on. And you and I both came on camera together and looked at each other and went, oh yeah, okay, I remember each other now. This is great. So this is the joy of having a pre-interview and chatting is I get to meet my guests ahead of time, think about what we're going to talk about, and come back for a great conversation. So for us, you and I, welcome back. But for everyone listening, first time hearing you on the podcast, can you tell everybody where you are in this big world of ours?
Sure. I'm in Bergen County, New Jersey. So right out of, New York a little bit.
Excellent. So Jersey's representing, which I love. It's great. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your author journey. I always like to find out what that moment was when you were not an author and then you said, I'm going to be an author. Like, tell me, how does that even happen?
Yeah. So I have been a therapist for 20 years and I have a private practice. I work with really high school and college kids, always worked with kids. And at some point I thought maybe I'll write a book one day, but it was like way in the back of my head. Didn't really think much of it. And then COVID hit. So COVID is when I became an author. And the reason was I was completely full. Every therapist I knew was completely full. And here we are getting phone calls from parents begging us to take their kids in because of the mental health crisis that was happening. And nobody had room. So I kind of say a lot of the same themes throughout therapy. And I said, I just need to get this in parents' hands. I need to write a book to give them 10 steps to improve their children's mental health right now. So that is when I sat down and decided I'm going to be an author. And I wrote a book and got it out as quickly as humanly possible in order to get them to the parents who desperately needed them during that time. So that was my first book, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know. And then I quickly realized I need to write a second book because I need really a workbook for teens based on these principles so the teens could take ownership. So that's what I did. I wrote a second book that was a workbook for the teens.
Okay, now we're technically out of the pandemic as we speak, but are you seeing a rebound, a change in what's happening in the world right now, or are we still kind of at that same spot, even though the pandemic seems to be a little bit less in the news?
Right. Even though the pandemic is less in the news, the anxiety has not gone away.
Right.
It has sparked it up, especially with kids, and it has not gone away. And we are still in a massive mental health crisis.
Right.
Massive.
So, and I think that's something we forget is that even though it's not newsworthy at the moment that we're hearing it every 5 seconds, there's still people that need help. in all of this. And,
Yes,
and
I
then
think
it seems so silent, right? We just we forget almost.
it is. The long-term effects are going to be seen for years to come. I mean, we really went through something that no one has ever seen. We went through a massive global trauma, and it completely impacted everybody, but especially kids who didn't know how to process this, whose entire worlds were turned upside down. And I think, during COVID, a lot of the times parents were saying, oh, well, kids are resilient. They'll be fine. They're not. They're not. They were suffering through grief and trauma, and it all needed to be addressed.
And at such a crucial time, too, right? When kids are forming their future, their connections in life, their friendships, social wise, everything.
Everything.
To be regulated to your home and very little impact with outside world. That's hard.
It's incredibly hard. So I think that, we still need to have those conversations about how hard it really was and how much was lost. Like it's grief and loss. It doesn't just go away.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any other grief,
right.
There's steps to work through it. But as parents, we didn't know what to do.
No.
Right. When we're in reaction mode as well, or our boss is telling us to stay home, or we don't know what to do. Right. So what kind of things, as we begin into the conversation today, for parents who, because we haven't talked about the pandemic in a while, what kind of questions or what kind of things can we put in front of our kids to kind of get that conversation going again when we've fallen into silence in our home about it and assume that everything's okay?
Yeah. I think it's still, needed to have those conversations to say, hey, remember when everything shut down? That was so hard for me, and how was that for you? And do you still remember, what did we lose? What did we give up? What happened during that time that is still making you sad? And is it hard for you now to get back into the swing socially when for so long you weren't?
Right.
And how did that impact all your friendships? And are you still friends with the same people you were friends with before COVID? And having all of those conversations. And there's moments when there's ways to work it into the conversation that feels pretty natural. Like if your kids are talking about what their weekend plans are. Oh, remember when we couldn't go out on weekends? To bring it up. We can't just pretend like it didn't happen. It happened.
Okay. So between the two books back and forth, what are your hopes for parents and readers of these books? What was the end goal in your mind as you sat down to write?
I really believe that you need to build a strong foundation, just like a house where it could weather any storm. It's the same with your mental health. If you do not have a strong foundation, any stressor that comes in is going to kind of knock you right over. So my hope was people are going to take these books and actually make changes that's going to improve their foundation so they could handle the world and all the stress better and improve their mental health. And I broke the books into, 10 foundations, 5 of them being physical, which I think we overlook all the time, even though the research is there that shows how much the physical aspect leads into our mental health. And the other 5 are more mental health foundations to put into place.
Okay. Can you give us some example of some of those?
Sure.
Some of those, I'd love to hear. Don't give them all because we want to buy the book. Obviously, we're here to sell books and put more books in people's homes.
One of my favorites for the physical is sleep. We are a nation that is just sleep deprived. And the more research that's coming out on sleep, it shows what an impact it has in terms of our physical health, in terms of, stroke, dementia, heart disease, diabetes, all of it there's a connection to sleep. But it also has a massive impact on our mental health. You cannot be functioning well. You can't focus. You can't be able to have patience or problem solve well if you are sleep deprived. And I think on some level, we all know that, but we all forget it. Meanwhile, we have kids staying up till 2 a.m, watching Netflix and then going to school the next morning, coming home cranky and fussy. When they're babies, we say, oh, they're tired. They need their nap. But our teenagers are the same way. They need their sleep. And as parents, we need our sleep unless we can't function well.
Yeah.
So it's such a basic foundation that is just overlooked all the time. That's one of them. My other favorite one is water. We need to be hydrated. And are you? Yes, me too.
There you go.
But there's actual studies that link, dehydration to increased anger in kids.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like
Really?
so basic. Like, how much water do you need? And in my teen workbook, it shows, all the reasons why you need the water and then how much water you should be having and how to track it and how to really incorporate it. So it's just these basic, small, simple steps that we need to incorporate into our daily habits.
And
And
that's
we get
actually, yeah, and that's actual water, not like an energy drink with has water in it. No, no, come on, like water, just water. Yeah.
actual water. I said to a kid once, they were complaining about headaches and, all this other stuff. And I said, how much water do you drink? And she looked at me and she goes, like in a week? No, like in a day. And she's like, some days I don't. Every cell in your body needs water to detox, to, function properly. Some of these kids really are drinking no water. Like, let's start with the basics. Start with the basics.
Okay, parents, if you're listening, you need to rewind that again.
Yeah.
Kids, you're having water tonight come on. That's such a great tip. Like, again, I wouldn't have thought of that. I'm thinking mental health is so heady and getting into the deep details of what's going on, what you're processing. That's great. I love
Our
this.
physical body, of course. And like we know it, our physical body impacts our mental health. So we have to be healthy. So yeah, and water is one of those things where like you're going to save yourself money. Stop buying the soda and the energy drinks.
Right. Yeah.
It's a win-win.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's healthier for you, everything, right? So,
Right.
Okay. When you release the books out into the world, you have an expectation that it's going to reach an audience. Have you heard back from readers and families that are working with you through the books as well? Like, what kind of response are you hearing back?
That's been really incredible for people to say, now that I have this book, we made, these types of changes, or we started having family dinner, or, me and my kids started going for a walk together and really improved our quality time. So to hear the feedback is amazing. And that's, I think any author of this type of self-help book wants to hear that, yes, it is changing someone's life.
Is there anything that didn't make the book that still is your passion and you just can't get rid of that idea? It's still kind of there for you and it wants to live. Is there anything that didn't make the book?
I think that, when I wrote my book, it's so hard for my population because I work with high school and college kids. So I call them all teens, but the college kids, they're not quite adults. They're not quite teens. I don't really know what to call them. I think they need their own book because they really have their unique, challenges living independently for the first time and being in college. And time management really plays into that as well, along with, self-care. So I think at some point there may be a book just for the college students down the road.
There you go. Late breaking news there for everyone. Because they have one foot in childhood and one foot in adulthood. And talk about pressure. Like you have to know what you want to be when you grow up instantly. Like we all know what we're going to be. So you take a shot at it. You have no idea. But all of the pressures of leaving home and finding your identity as a person by yourself. And there's so much going on, like, and then add on all the other stressors as well.
Budgeting money for the first time, like
right.
All that type of stuff,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there might be a book coming out just for the college kids.
Okay. Well, it has to happen. So it just has to. I'm cheering you on for that. That's amazing. You're going to have like 300 books you've released on this by the time we're done. It's great. We talked before we hit record that someone inspired you in your early days of your writing. And you had a story around your inspiration as an author. Can you kind of share that with us as well?
Yeah. So I started listening to podcasts at some point in my life, right? And I really was loving them and going through different people. And one of the podcasts I was listening to was Rachel Hollis, who's an author. And I've read some of her books and, I was listening to her podcast and she started talking about the writing process. And she said, so many people think that you need this like nicely set up room where you're going to go and devote X amount of time. She said, I just need my laptop and I work anywhere and everywhere in order to fit it in because she has kids and has a busy schedule as well. And I went, yeah, what am I waiting for? So I set up my laptop and I just started bringing it everywhere with me. And I was in the car, waiting for school pickup, writing. And I was at the airport writing. And it really came down to you can write anywhere. You can find the time. Like everyone always says, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. You do have the time. You just need to really utilize all those moments where you're just sitting, not doing anything. So that was like my big inspiration of, oh, I do have the time and I can do this. And I just started carrying my laptop everywhere with me and writing in those moments.
So with so much time on your hands, I say with a little smile, is there a podcast in your future along with the book? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think I really enjoy being a guest on podcasts, but I don't think I'm going to, because a podcast, I actually need to be stationary. I can't be in my car trying to do that while I'm at pickup.
Yeah, yes.
So I think for now, I'm going to leave the podcast to the podcasters.
I love it. So how has guesting been for you?
I've really enjoyed it because I've been able to connect with so many people I would have never connected with before. So that's been really fun.
As an author, speaking to fellow authors, I need your encouragement to get more guests on my show. What would you say to authors about going out to talk about their books and their passions on podcasting? Any tips for them?
So it's funny, as writers, sometimes we really enjoy writing and not so much the promoting piece of it. But unfortunately, nobody's going to know about your book unless you do the promoting piece of it. Yeah. And I think podcasts are a really great way in order to do that and to reach so many different people. And it's not like pressure. They're just easy, the podcasts, I think. It's like a conversation, and us writers can do that.
I love it. Okay, so as you work with people and you helping them through their mental health journey, and it is a journey. It's not going to be, it's going to take a little while to kind of work through this. Somebody comes in to sit down with you for the first time. Tell us what that feels like. Where's your starting point? I know it might be different with everybody, but in general terms, where would your starting point be if you and I sat down and I'm coming to get your help today? Where do you even start?
My starting point is normally, what do you want your life to look like and feel like? Like, what do you see the change to be to know that this is working? And then I also kind of take a step back and say, let's look at your entire lifestyle as well. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you hydrated? How are your boundaries? What's working? What's not working? And we kind of take it from there. And it's a lot of problem solving. And it's a lot of putting, skills into place in order to have the life that you want to have. Because I think everyone can have the life that they want to have.
Mm-hmm. And I think the one thing that we all struggle with is the definition of what good is. Like, what is good mental health? My definition might be different than the person sitting beside me. So do you have some kind of guidelines around what good mental health looks like so that we know if we're headed in the right way?
I think that if more of your days are content than not, that you're probably in a good place.
I like the word content.
Be amazing, right? It's content.
Yeah, that's a good word.
If you're more content than not, you're doing good.
That's a good feeling. Like I can remember when my kids were small and we're all in the same house together and it's bedtime and you just feel so content as a parent that everyone's under one roof and I know where everybody's at. Now, for me, an empty nester with the group of people that need your new book, by the way, that you're going to write for us. I have 3 kids in that age group. They would love it, by the way. So yeah, we need that book. Now I'm not feeling quite as content because I don't know where they are. They're all out of the house. That feeling of contentment, I can taste it. I know exactly what that feels like, right? And I know when I don't have it. So that's a good measuring stick. I like contentment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, content.
Interesting. Okay. Now you're making me think, which I love. I love when a guest makes me think. So as we go through the books, and tell us more just about the workbook too, because I think that's a different style of writing than your first book, right?
So what's so funny is, you write one book and you're like, okay, I got this. But then if you write a workbook, it's completely different. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do graphics. Nice. So it's a relearning process all over again. So that was really interesting because it was a lot less of, what I was saying as much as, okay, here's what I'm saying. And now how do you incorporate it? And it was more like a journaling style and charts and graphs so that kids could really see, like, this is where I'm at, this is where I need to go, and these are the steps I need to take to get there. So it was a really interesting process. And I don't know how I feel about it. Workbooks are hard, just from like a formatting and, the logistical side of it. But I think it's important for kids not just to hear the parents talk about, this is what I know you need to do, but to give them a resource and say, you own it, you go for it, and you do it, because it needs to be important to you.
Is there any explanation needed for the workbook, or is it pretty self-evident with the workbook and how it operates?
Yeah, it's based on the 10 foundations. So it's broken into, like the section on water is why water is important,
Okay.
all the reasons why it's going to make you feel better, and then how much you should be drinking. And then let's chart it for 30 days. Most of my workbook is based on a 30-day model, because I feel like if you keep it up for 30 days, you're in a good place. Then you can keep it going.
Yeah, it starts to become habit then.
It does. Right. It does. And then, also in the workbook, we talk about like boundaries and friendships and what do those look like and what are your expectations, and not all of your friends can be your best friends. So different levels of friendships and what all those levels mean and what to expect from people at those levels.
I'm kind of anticipating your answer even before I ask the question, but I still want to ask, is there a magic age where mental health is more important, or is this something that we're going to be teaching our children right from day one?
Yeah, you're teaching it right from day one. Okay. You really are. Yeah. But in terms of my workbook, it's normally for 13 and up. Okay.
Well, that's the other part too. I was going to ask that question. That's great. See, you know exactly what you're doing, and I can tell that you've been a guest before. So that'd be the magic age for the book then, 13?
Yes. Yeah. But for my parenting book, it's really, the sooner you read it, the better it is, because you're going to start some of the things, the sooner you start, the better. Like when we talk about healthy eating, it's very hard to go from a house of unhealthy eating to healthy eating when you have teenagers. It's much easier to start this when they're young.
And then I guess as parents, my other side of my brain's thinking that I need to set a great example in my own life. It is not just about helping someone else all the time. It's about me.
So the wonderful book, the wonderful part about the parenting book is that I talk all the time in it. Parents, you have to model this. Yeah. You can't tell your kids to eat healthy and then not eat healthy. You can't tell your kids to be hydrated and then not hydrate. You can't tell them to have less screen time and they look over and you're playing Candy Crush on your phone all day long. Like, you have to model it. Mm. So this book not only helps you as a parent, but it helps you as a person as well. And so often as parents, we put so much energy into our kids, we forget to take care of ourselves. And you have to take care of yourselves. It makes you a better parent.
So this is a book that we all need, is technically what you're telling me right now, is we all need this book.
Absolutely.
Right? Well, that's a good sales plug. I like that. Besides going on podcasts and being an amazing guest at it, by the way, keep doing this, do more of this. Do you do like speaking engagements? Do you get up in front of groups of people and talk about this? Because we need more of this right now.
Yeah, we do. We need so much more of it. I do speaking engagements. I love to just spread the message of like, you could take control of your own mental health. You can feel better. Here are some easy steps. So I love giving out that information.
Because I could picture a cottage, a nice place in the winter, cozy room, crackling fireplace, you speaking with a bunch of parents, going away for a weekend retreat and working through stuff together. Absolutely. And doing a community around the book. Like, that's what I'm picturing, right?
Yeah. And I speak to schools a lot too, because it's really important that everyone's on the same page with us.
Do you think there's enough resources right now within the school system to address this in a meaningful way, or do we need bringing in extra support?
That's an interesting question. I'm going to give you an interesting answer.
Okay, I like this.
I think that most schools, depending on the district, have more than enough mental health providers in them. However, I think that they're putting a Band-Aid essentially like on a bullet wound, and you need to actually really start making foundational changes in these schools. When we talk to kids about sleep, they can't sleep if they have sports until 6 o'clock at night and then 5 hours of homework. When we talk about food and you have vending machines filled with soda and candy still, that's a problem. When we talk about hydration and we have water fountains that are shooting out dirty, polluted water, that's a problem. So we need to get back to the basics in our schools. So, I mean, you could put in 100 more therapists in these schools if you are not going to start looking at boundaries with homework, because kids should not be doing homework on weekends. Like when we work for a living, we have boundaries, or we should, and not work on weekends. I don't know why we're expecting our kids to.
Wow.
So until we start making those foundational changes, it doesn't matter how many staff members we're bringing in.
I think I just poked the bear there a little bit. I love this. That this is like, I could see you as soon as I asked that question, you sat up. For those who aren't watching, you sat straight up like, okay, here we go. And I'm like, I totally agree with this. I don't understand why kids live under this umbrella of stress where every teacher thinks their course is the most important course. So I'm going to load you heavy with work. Like they don't even talk to each other, like these kids are struggling. Like let's cut them some space, right?
Right. Homework should be, one, age appropriate, and two, actually teaching them something.
Yeah.
Probably more project-based, to be honest with you, longer term, more project-based. A lot of this is just busy work. And we know the research behind homework, especially at the elementary school level, it does nothing. It does nothing. So again, until we're really ready to make these changes in our school and in our homes, mental health won't get better.
There we go. So that's what I love. That's okay. I'm going to have to buy the books. That's what you got me. You got me. Okay. You got me. You did it. It worked. So again, we're going to close off here in a few minutes, but what I like to do near the end is ask again for your contact information and all of that. I'd love for people to connect with you. The one thing that I always like to ask is also where you're most active on social media, because there's so many places to be. Yes. And I don't, again, stress, right? Mental health. We don't need to be living in the world of social media and be everywhere. So from your perspective, where you're most active. And then after we're all done all that, and my listeners know that I do this, I have one more question for you here at the end, but give us all the details on how we can connect with you, get the book. We want you as a speaker at our next event, all of that great information.
So my website is the best way to get a hold of me, and it's Keri Cooper, Keri, Cooper, holistictherapy.com. And the book is on Amazon, both of them, Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Parent Needs to Know, and then Mental Health Uncensored, 10 Foundations Every Teen Needs to Know, which is a workbook. And I'm also on Instagram at Keri Cooper Holistic Therapy.
Sounds like you've done that before, and I love that. My last question, again, I kind of led into a little bit, is the whole world of social media. For me, growing up, I could show my age, but there was no Google, there was no internet when I was young. So we played outside. We stayed outside till the street lights came on. That was the time to go home. It was all about community, and you'd have bikes lined up on the front yard of your house to know if you were home or not. We didn't have the connectivity we have today. And if you had a bad day at school, it stayed at school. It didn't follow you home on your device. In a world where we're so connected, it feels like we're so disconnected at the same time. Any tips from your perspective on how we can juggle our social media life and reduce some of the stressors that might cause us to go backwards as we try to progress forward? We're so connected. I don't even know how we unconnect anymore. I don't even know it's possible. What do we do as parents? And then for our kids, maybe a discussion topic that we can start this week, maybe around dinner tonight, that we can open up the communication, your suggestion, that we could have a conversation with them to make sure they're doing okay, or how we can help them. It's a big, long question, but I know you'll have lots to say.
I think one of the first things, and you kind of touched on this, is dinner. We need to in our house be connected and not disconnected, and have everybody off in their bedrooms on their devices. So family dinner is so important. And if it's not dinner, family breakfast, but at some moment, the family coming around and sitting down and saying, what was the best part of your day today? What was a part that you didn't like? Going around and having those conversations is so crucial. Your children should not be taking a plate of food and going to eat in their bedroom. You need to connect. And you're right. Social media has made us so connected, yet so disconnected. So encouraging your kids to get outside is so important, which means you have to probably get outside with family hikes, go for a walk with your kid, anything you could do to increase that quality time is so important and so good for them. And, I always say you need to set up some type of rules around your child's devices. They should probably never be in the bedroom, especially overnight. They should all be in one collective place charging. Try to hold off on social media as long as humanly possible. There does come a time when you just can't, because it will impact them, unfortunately, socially. But don't be the first one to jump on it. Please be the last.
That's good advice. That is so good. And yeah, I can remember when our kids were at that stage where they would grab their plates and off they go to their rooms, and you're like, this is not what we signed up for. We're supposed to be family. We're supposed to do this. So great encouragement there. I think we all can do that tonight. And I think that's why I was looking forward to having you on the show was, again, our mental health is impacted by everything around us and how we treat ourselves and kind of how we speak to ourselves. And the one thing that I've been challenging people in the podcasting space was to think highly of themselves. Like, start talking to yourself in better terms. And picture this, if somebody talked to your kids the way you talk to yourself, what would you do? Mm-hmm. If that was a person and they were berating your kid up and down, and talking down to them the way that we talk down to ourselves, would you step in or would you let it happen? And I think all of us would step in. So from that perspective, as we talk to ourselves, when no one's around and we say those mean, hurtful words to ourselves, we're not helping ourselves. So having a resource like this, through your book, through reaching out to you and having you in our life, I think that'll help us to live better. And that's really what we need, is more of you, really.
Thank you. Yeah, mental health is within everyone's power. You just need to create a lifestyle that supports it.
Excellent. It's like a muscle. You need to exercise it. So everyone, it's time to hit the gym with your mental health. And you have 2 books you need to buy and a third one that's coming. And definitely need to connect with Keri. So Keri, thank you so much for doing this today. When the next book comes out, hey, I would love to have you come back and let's celebrate. And every book after there, we'll just have you back as a recurring guest because you're just going to keep writing so many great books. So thank you, Keri, so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Awesome, everyone. All the information's in the show notes. As always, please go support Keri, her books. And when you buy the book, wherever you buy it, in person, online, leave an amazing review. Let everybody know how great it is.
That would be great. Yeah.
Please, because we want more people to find the book. Don't just write great author, great book. Everyone can write that, but give something that really spoke to you when you read this and connected with the book so that other people can find it as well. Thank you so much, Keri.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for checking out the latest episode of Living the Next Chapter. I'm so happy to bring on these amazing authors and to share their stories, but I do have to confess I have a problem. And people who know me best would say, Dave, you have more than one problem. My problem is I have more episodes than I can release to you through my audio host, but I have a solution for you. Oh yes, head over to our YouTube channel, subscribe today to our YouTube channel, and you can get the most recent episode. I'm posting this episode today that I recorded today, and you can get it now on YouTube. Jump the line, move right past that big burly guy at the door. You can get right in and get the most recent episode of Living the Next Chapter on our YouTube channel. Make sure you go there. livingthenextchapter.com has all the information. And again, I want to thank you for making this podcast such a great joy to create. Catch you on the next one.